Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi here with rotocurve.com, and I'm here to walk you through some of the hitters that we think are in good spots today, Tuesday, July 7th, 2015, for your MLB DFS needs. The first guy we're going to talk about today is Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi is a guy who has been getting hit pretty hard by left-handed bats. Left-handed bats have a 352 batting average against them with a whip of 1.96. Now, there's a couple guys on that Oakland team who we should probably be looking at to target against the Eovaldi today. The first guy is Josh Reddick. Reddick is a left-handed bat hitting in Yankee Stadium against a guy who struggles with left-handed bats. He has a 329 average against right-handed pitchers on the season with 10 home runs and 216 at-bats. Reddick will likely be hitting somewhere between the 3 and the 5 hole today for Oakland and is definitely somebody that can get a couple hits for you and easily has a chance to go yard with the short porch down right field in Yankee Stadium. Next guy I want to talk about is Billy Burns. The leadoff batter for Oakland has been somebody who's been really, really good for fantasy this year. His price has come up a little bit, so he's not the cheap option that he used to be. But he's hitting 314 on the season, has 16 stolen bases, has scored a ton of runs since becoming a leadoff man in that order. And he's another guy who hits right-handed pitching pretty well. So that's another option on that Oakland outfield that I think you can look at today. The last guy I want to discuss is Stephen Vogt. Vogt is one of the best catching options on the day, no matter what site you're playing on. Over on DraftKings at only 3,800, I think he's just way too cheap. He has a 296 batting average and 12 home runs already and 186 at-bats against right-handed pitching. So he's another guy with that short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium that I definitely think is going to be a play against a guy like Eovaldi. Next pitcher I wanted to discuss is Yovani Gallardo. Gallardo has allowed a higher batting average to right-handed bats in 2013 and 14. This year, he's actually pitching really, really well. So I'm going to take these numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt because I think some regression is coming based on his career numbers and his career averages. The two right-handed bats on Arizona that you would want to target against somebody like this are Paul Goldschmidt, who has a 339 batting average with 15 home runs and 227 at-bats, and a guy like A.J. Pollock, who's hitting 298 with 8 home runs, as well as actually you can probably look at a guy like Yasmani Tomas. I'm looking at his numbers right now. He's actually hitting 322 against right-handers as well. So that's pretty much the meat of the order right there for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Pollock will either lead off or hit second. Tomas is usually in the 4 hole with Goldie in the 3 spot. So I think all 3 of those guys could be in play today against a guy like Gallardo. Next guy I want to discuss is Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd is a rookie. He's given up 5 home runs in the first 6 innings that he's pitched so far in the major leagues. He's basically somebody who was just thrown in there to kind of eat up some innings, and I kind of expect him to be somebody who gets knocked around today. The problem is the White Sox don't really have a great offense where there's a lot of guys that you want to target, but there are a few that stand out. The guy who stands out numbers-wise is Avisail Garcia. He has a 339 batting average going up against left-handed pitching with 2 home runs already on the season. Another guy who historically hits left-handed pitching really well on that White Sox team is Alexi Ramirez. So I think those are 2 guys that you can use pretty cheap options if you're looking to save some salary. A guy like a Jose Abreu is obviously the big home run threat for the Chicago White Sox. I think he would be somebody who would be in play against the left-hander. But overall, there aren't a ton of other bats on that team that you want to take. You could probably not going to look at a guy like LaRoche because that would be a lefty-lefty. You can probably look at a guy like Melky Cabrera, who has been hot and has been batting in the 3 hole lately. But again, taking these Chicago White Sox guys, it's not huge upside, but it is definitely a good matchup for all of them today, especially the right-handed bats. Speaking of good matchups, one of the best matchups on the day, one of the ones that's going to be the most highly used, is going to be the Dodgers bats going up against Chad Billingsley. Billingsley pretty much has a small sample size over the past couple years to look at. He didn't pitch at all in 2014, pitched sparingly in 2013, and has only thrown a couple innings so far this year. But he's basically somebody who struggles with left-handed bats throughout his career and also has a little bit of a problem with the home run ball, later in his career before he took his hiatus. There are a ton of guys on the Dodgers that you can target. And depending on what site you're playing on, for some reason, these bats are really, really cheap. I was making lineups this morning over on DraftKings. You can get Adrian Gonzalez for under 4K. You can get Turner for under 4K. You can get Howie Kendrick, I think, is under 4K. Jock Peterson and Puig are not very expensive. Yasmani Grandal is probably one of the more expensive guys, but on DraftKings, he's only 3,300 over there. I mean, there are just an absolute ton of Dodgers bats that you can fit into a lineup today. I think it's going to be very popular to see people try to squeeze a bunch of the Dodger bats in their cash game lineups today. And the thing is that they're so cheap, you can squeeze them in, and you still might be able to go up and get like a Max Scherzer and a cheap option, or go for like two mid-tier options, like maybe a $10,000 pitcher, and then somebody like Taijuan Walker. So I definitely think that you're going to see a lot of these Dodgers bats over on DraftKings today. For cash games, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you could maybe even break the rule and put a third or fourth, bat from this game in there, because they are going to get some runs against Billingsley today. And because they're so cheap, you're still going to be able to get the big pitching that you want. So I definitely think that's something that you might want to consider. The next one I want to talk about is, Matt Andriese from Tampa Bay. He has a 293 batting average and 4 home runs allowed in 20 innings pitched to left-handed bats. So there are 2 guys on Kansas City, or actually 3 guys now on Kansas City that I think we can target. The first one is Hosmer. Hosmer has a 299 batting average and an 838 on-base plus slugging. He came back recently from injury. He's been okay. He was much better earlier on in the year. He still rounded himself back into form, but I think this is a pretty good matchup for him, and I think he's in a good spot here today. Mike Moustakas was actually put on the bereavement list, so get him out of your lineups if you were planning on playing him. He was somebody who I liked. He has a high batting average against right-handed pitching. And the other guy who has moved into the 2 spot in the order with Moustakas out is Alex Gordon. Alex Gordon is another interesting guy that you can look at. His price has come up a little bit, but he's a guy that has some power. He's a guy that can get some hits for you. He's a guy that can steal a base, score a run, knock a run in. So he can basically fill up a stat sheet for you. And while Moustakas is out and he's hitting in the 2-hole, I definitely think he's somebody that you can consider. Next guy I want to talk about is Tyler Cravey. Tyler Cravey is only making his 2nd career start. He had pretty good numbers in the minors, 3.69 ERA, 8 strikeouts per 9 innings, and a whip of only 120. He's going up against that Atlanta team today, but I do think that Atlanta is going to be able to get to him a little. You got a guy like Cameron Maybin who's been leading off lately. He's got a 302 batting average against right-handed pitching, and he's been on fire. I mean, he's been putting up some big numbers. Go and check his game logs if you don't believe me, and just realize that being up on the top of the order has given him an extra at-bat or so. He's been able to run a little bit on the base pads. He's been scoring some runs. He's been getting multiple hits. So Cameron Maybin is definitely somebody who you might want to consider. His price is still cheap in some spots. In other spots, it's come up. But where he's still cheap, I definitely think he's somebody you might want to try to work into your rosters. Jose Uribe with a 309 batting average against a guy like Cravey matches up pretty well. Profiles to do well there. And also Nick Markakis against the righty with a 318 batting average, batting from the left side. Markakis doesn't have a ton of power, but his price is still pretty cheap. He's more of a cash game play for me. I don't really see the upside with him. Uribe has a little bit more power, but again, not a guy that I'm targeting for power at the positions that he's eligible at. The next guy I want to talk about, the Angels are playing Colorado at Coors Field this week. So you have Bettis going up for the Rockies. He's allowed right-handed bats to hit better against him the last 3 years. So the right-handed bats are all going to be in play. There's a lot of right-handed bats for that Angels team that are in play. Obviously, the 2 big guys to look at are going to be Mike Trout and Albert Pujols. Trout has a 295 average with 16 home runs and 234 at-bats against right-handed pitching. And Pujols has a 283 average with 21 home runs and 233 at-bats against right-handed pitching. So those are the 2 big guys. They're both very expensive. Pujols on DraftKings, I think, is $5,600 with the Coors Field premium, which means that you can go up $200 and get a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, or you could take a guy like Pujols. Obviously, it's a great spot for him. Obviously, I think these guys are going to be owned despite the fact that they're sky-high prices, and they are in good spots. I mean, Coors Field does yield the most hits. They got a good matchup against a pitcher who's not all that good today. So I even think you can look, knowing, though, that it's going to be very popular. You know you're going to have people stacking up that Los Angeles Angels lineup. Guys like Johnny Giavotella, if he's batting on top and he's still cheap, is somebody that you can look at. Cole Calhoun had a great game last game, and he does have the lefty-righty split going on, even though, Bettis has been a little bit worse to right-handers. Guy like David Freese will be batting behind him. So these are all guys that are going to be highly used today. Like I said, they are expensive. They got the premium bump for being in Coors Field on a site like DraftKings. But if you're playing on some other sites that are a little bit slower to adjust pricing, if you can find any of these guys cheap, I think that they're all going to be in a good spot today. The run total on that game is already up to 11, so they're expecting to see a lot of runs scored. And obviously, all these guys towards the top of the order are going to have a lot to say about that if it comes to fruition. Next guy I want to talk about is Manny Banuelos. He's been very good in his first start the other day. I think he finished with 24 points over on DraftKings, double-digit score on FanDuel and Fantasy Aces. I mean, that's really, really good. This guy was a huge prospect in a Yankee system a couple years ago, had some arm trouble. They traded him. He wound up down in Atlanta now. In the minor leagues, he has allowed a little bit of a high batting average to left-handed bats. He's been very tough on righties, though. So the two guys that you can look at for Milwaukee are going to be the same two guys we've been looking at all week. Gerardo Parra, who hit another home run last night, has his average up to 320 against right-handed pitching, 7 home runs and 222 at-bats. And then Adam Lind, who actually put up a 0 last night, but he's got a 309 batting average against right-handed pitching, 14 home runs and 230 at-bats. It is the first time that they're seeing Banuelos, and the first time around it is usually something that is better for the pitcher than the hitters. So just be a little bit cautious about this. But at the same point in time, you know, all those guys on Milwaukee could be in play. Banuelos had a great first start, but I don't know if he's going to go out there and do that every game, especially with young guys that usually have a little bit of growing pains. And if he has any regression in this game, he could be low owned because I think a lot of people are going to be using him today against a team that on paper strikes out a lot against right-handers and doesn't have the highest batting average in the league. Although, remember, they are healthy now. They do have guys like Lucroy and Gomez playing full-time and guys like Parra and Lind who have started hitting. And this offense is a lot better than the one that was ranked dead last a couple weeks ago. Next guy I would want to talk about is Andrew Heaney. He is the pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels going up against Colorado Rockies in Coors Field. That's never an easy task, never something that you want to do. Heaney was a pretty big prospect with the Marlins, and it was kind of weird to me because I feel like the Marlins kind of gave up on him pretty quick. So far this year, he's allowed a 309 batting average with 6 home runs and 20 innings pitched to right-handed bats. Now, that means that you're going to have the two big boppers from Colorado are going to be in play. Tulo is batting .419 against left-handed pitching with 3 homers and 62 at-bats. He smashed left-handed pitching each of the last couple of years, so this is a strong trend, something that's going to be continued. It's not a, flash in the pan, one-hit wonder kind of thing. The other guy you want to look at is Nolan Arenado. Arenado's got a .313 batting average with 8 home runs and 112 at-bats against left-handers this year. Again, he's a big home run hitter going up against a guy who's allowed a lot of home runs. He hits very well against left-handed pitching, and he gets a weak left-handed pitcher here at home in Coors Field. So both of those guys are going to be in play today. A sneaky option for you, who I like better at catcher than first base, if you can find him at catcher, is Willen Rosario. Rosario's hitting .310 with 2 home runs and 47 at-bats against left-handed pitching. One of the things that he has done well, and not everybody has always say he does well, is hit left-handed pitching. So Willen Rosario will probably be in there somewhere around like the 4 to 6 hole today for that Rockies team, and I definitely think he's somebody who's in play who you should take a look at. A couple more guys to talk about. Vincent Velasquez from Houston. He's going up against Cleveland today. Right-handed bats do better against him. Even in the minor leagues, we've seen that. But there are a couple lefties who hit right-handers really, really well that I think we should still want to consider. One of those guys is Jason Kipnis. Kipnis has a .375 batting average with 24 extra base hits and 192 at-bats against righties so far this year. So those numbers are about as elite as can be. Kipnis is expensive, but he's definitely somebody that you should be looking at if you can fit him into your lineup. The other guy who is cheap and has been smashed in right-handed pitching has been David Murphy. Murphy has a .323 batting average with 5 home runs and 53 at-bats so far. I'm sorry, and 153 at-bats so far this year against right-handers. Tends to find himself in the 4 hole when they do go up against the righty. So he could be up towards the top of that order, has good numbers, good splits, and goes up against a guy who's not bad as a rookie, but I think who the Cleveland bats can get to. A couple more guys to mention for you. We got Tyler Lyons, who's who struggles with right-handed batters. It's allowed a .280 batting average with 7 home runs and 46 innings to him. A couple guys that means we should be targeting against the lefty are guys like Chris Bryant. Bryant has a .310 batting average with 4 home runs and 42 innings pitched. Guy like Rizzo, who's really good against lefties, 333 batting average and 60 at-bats versus left-handed pitching. And a guy like Dexter Fowler on top of that order, he's got a 340 batting average against left-handed pitching this year and about 50 at-bats. So those are the guys who are most likely to do some damage against the lefty. And again, Tyler Lyons going up for St. Louis. He's nothing special. Struggled a little bit with the right-handed bat. So I even think some of the guys lower in the order, guys like a Castro maybe, maybe even, Schwarber they sent down. But if there are any other guys on the lower part of that order that you think you can fit in there that are right-handed bats, I think they might be in good spots today for you as well. Let's see. You got Dan Haren today going up against the Boston Red Sox. He's allowed a 270 batting average with 10 home runs in 44 innings to left-handed bats. That means that a guy like Brock Holt might be in play. A guy like David Ortiz, if he's in the lineup, is definitely in play. Ortiz has a 272 average against right-handers, 13 home runs and 195 at-bats against right-handed pitching. So he's definitely another guy I think you could look at. His price is usually cheap, and you could usually get a big boost if he does hit you that home run, and he's been very good against right-handed pitching. So it's definitely somebody that you want to take a look at. Another guy who I think is in a decent spot is the Phillies bats going up against Brett Anderson. Anderson has allowed right-handed batters to hit 275 with 7 home runs and 63 innings pitched. The two guys who I'm really targeting are the two young guys over there for the Phillies, Cesar Hernandez, their second base shortstop eligible player. He's basically 21 for his last 43 with 9 stolen bases and about 11 runs scored over his last 10 games. On DraftKings, 8 of his last 10 games, he has double-digit points, and the lowest score he's had in his last 10 games has been a 7. Now, those are studly numbers for a guy who most people aren't going to play and who is still listed at only 3,100 on DraftKings. Now, the drawback for him today is he's going up against a lefty, so he doesn't have the same stolen base upside that he normally does, but I still think at only 3,100, that's a really cheap price for him. And I also think that they might get to Anderson and knock him out of the game. And if they do that, a lot of the guys who they bring in out of that bullpen for the Dodgers are right-handed pitchers. So if he can get on in the 6th or the 9th inning, there's a good chance that he's going to be off to the races because he basically has been every other game so far. The other guy who I like is Maikel Franco. Franco has power, and he hits left-handed pitching pretty well. He has 4 home runs already and 34 at-bats against lefties. So I definitely think that he can get a hold of one today against Anderson, who has allowed a couple home runs already this year to right-handed bats. So there's one other game, and I kept it for last because this is one that I think is going to be very popular and is going to be one of the major stacks that everybody has today. Jose Quintana is going up against Toronto. Quintana has allowed a 310 batting average with a 151 whip to right-handed bats. So that means that basically the entire Toronto Blue Jays lineup is going to be in play today. You got guys like Calabello, who's hitting 378 against lefties with 4 home runs and 45 at-bats. You got Donaldson, who's 343 with 5 home runs and 67 at-bats. Both Joey Batista and Edwin Encarnacion are hitting 286 with 2 home runs and 56 at-bats against left-handers. You got a guy like Danny Valencia, who will be good. You got a guy like Travis, who's a right-hander, who will be good. You got Jose Reyes on top of that order. You got, whether it's Diana Navarro or Russ Martin, you got catchers that can hit left-handed pitching well. There is not an easy spot in that lineup for Quintana to let up. He's going to be getting, right-handed bat after right-handed bat going up against him from top to bottom. As we've already discussed, and as we said yesterday, they were able to get to Sale a little bit, although they, they didn't really knock him around, but they did catch a couple home runs against them. This Toronto team has the highest on-base plus slugging by a large margin in the entire major leagues against against left-handed pitching. They also have the most home runs against left-handed pitching per at-bat. They have the highest batting average at over 300. So this Toronto team can hit lefties. Sale was a special case yesterday when he was still able to put up a decent game. Quintana is somebody who struggles a lot more with right-handed bats, so I am not expecting him to put up a good game. I think that all these Toronto guys are in play. You can basically put anybody in that lineup in your order today, and you should be in a good spot. There is some expensive pitching, so you're going to have to try to find some of those value guys. We gave you a few of them, depending on what site you're playing on. Everybody's different prices, so, make your short list with some of the guys that we mentioned here. Add some of the guys that are in good lineup spots later on today, and go ahead and make some money tonight. So that basically brings us to the end of our Benny's Bats segment. Hopefully you guys have, a good handle on some of the guys you want to start targeting for today. And hopefully we can all make some money. So as we always say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.